We will begin the Sabbath school with song number 168, He Leadeth Me. Everyone please stand for responsive reading number 335, found on page 278, 335. And we will lead straight into Gloria Patri, number 306, following this. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that ye present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service.
And be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good, and acceptable, and perfect will of God.
Let love be without dissimulation. Abhor that which is evil. Cleave to that which is good.
Be kindly affectionate one to another with brotherly love, in honor preferring one another.
Not slothful in business, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord.
Rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, continuing instant in prayer.
Distributing to the necessity of saints, given to hospitality.
Bless them which persecute you, bless and curse not.
Rejoice with them that do rejoice, and weep with them that weep.
Be of the same mind one toward another. Mind not high things, but condescend to men of low estate. Be not wise in your own conceits.
Recompense to no man evil for evil. Provide things honest in the sight of all men.
Therefore, if thy enemy not hunger, feed him. If he thirsts, give him drink. For in so doing, thou shalt heap coals of fire on his head. Be not overcome evil, but overcome evil with good.
Before your passage is 306. You ready?
306. Hymn 306.
The Secretary's report is Fisherville, June the 24th, 1864. The Sabbath School was opened at 9 a.m. by singing and prayer by the Superintendent John Zimmerman and was throughout conducted in moral and religious order. Total present, 91. Collection, 44 cents. The Sabbath School was well attended as there was communion after school. Attendance for the month, 371. That was for 5 Sundays. Collection for the month, $4.69. A bill was drawn from the Treasury by Daniel Tobias for $30.50 to purchase what was needed to repair the bell rope that had been torn. It was made known that the small boys should be more respectful when the bell is ringing. Mr. Knisley made a motion that the Sunday school shall turn out as a body to attend Peter Klinger's funeral, and the Secretary read the Constitution as follows. A large crowd is commanded. Peter Ebb was appointed to see about coal for the next Sabbath. After the lessons were given to all the scholars, our school was closed by Assistant Superintendent I. M. Groff in singing and prayers. Secretary C. E. Riggle.
On to old business. Mr. Erb has presented a bill for a ton of coal of $6.17. Do I have a motion to pay the bill?
I make the motion that we pay the bill.
I second it.
It has been moved and seconded that we pay the bill for a ton of coal. All in favor? Aye. Motion passed. Is there any new business?
We need to discuss the picnic. Now I would suggest the 10th day of September, being it will still be warm at that time.
I think we should treat the scholars with candy and have a refreshment stand at the picnic to benefit the school, too.
All in favor of having the Sunday school picnic on the 10th of September with candy for the scholars and a refreshment stand, say A. Aye. Opposed? Is there any other new business?
Yes, some boys are in the habit of running in and out of the church before school opens. I believe the church should not be opened until the ringing of the bells.
I agree. I make a motion that the school be closed until the ringing of the bells.
All in favor of keeping the school doors closed until after the ringing of bells, say aye. Aye. Let's continue with song number 32, Abide With Me. We will close with the Lord's Prayer in the Mitzvah, which that's the last hymn, number 312 in the book. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you, Greta, for playing for us today. She's going to continue to play. Hello, everyone, again. And is this on? Yes, it is. What you just witnessed was us taking notes that we found in the Sunday school books in the closet back there. There's a lot of those books. And a lot of them didn't say much. But we did find notes about different secretaries' reports, and we combined it into a compilation of the Sunday school program that they would have followed way back when, and used the songs and the responsive readings and the mitzvahs that they would have done. There were a few items, though, that did not get into our program that we thought were also worth mentioning. And right now we're going to have Sandy is going to read a few of those extra secretary reports and remarks that didn't make it into the program for you.
From June 13, 1880, the Sunday school did not have the regular rule on account of the dedication of the new organ. From May 15, 1881, officers and teachers not alive to their duty. The harvest truly is plentiful, but the reapers are few. Several classes are going to pieces for want of regular teachers. January 13th, 1881. Sorry, Greta. The organist was late. August 20th, 1882. The day was cool but dry. Sunday school not attended on account of many children sick with scarlet fever.
Okay, that last one that she read reminds me to tell you that when we were out here looking in the cemetery for where all of the grave sites are for the people on our windows, we discovered the very oldest cemetery right behind me here. Unfortunately, there are 132 grave sites out here. 88 of them are children, anywhere from a day old to only 8 or 9 or 10 years old. So let's all be very fortunate and happy that here in the 21st century, we have some medical knowledge that that doesn't happen anymore. Another name that we mentioned a lot that we found when we were doing our research was Peter Erb. And Peter Erb was just mentioned again in our program a second ago. But I asked Carol Stonerow, who did a fantabulous job of doing all the research for our windows here. And I said, Carol, what do you know about Peter Erb? She goes, I got information on Peter Erb. So I'm going to read a little bit of that for you. Peter Erb was born near Reamstown, Lancaster County, November 1840. His mother was Barbara Ludwig. His father was John Erb, who died before Peter was born. It appears his parents were never married. Until he was 12, his grandfather Ludwig raised him. When his grandfather died, he was left to fend for himself by working on farms for his room and board. At the age of 14, he apprenticed to become a shoemaker. After 3 years, he became a journeyman in that field. When the Civil War broke out, Peter enlisted in the fall of 1861 in Company G, 79th Regiment, Pennsylvania Volunteers. He was present at many famous battles, including Perryville, Stone River, Chickamauga, and Chattanooga. He was in the Atlanta campaign and marched with General Sherman up through Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina. He was present when General Johnson surrendered, and in June of 1865, he was mustered out and discharged to Philadelphia. Peter returned to Lancaster County briefly, but in 1866, he moved to Fisherville and opened a shop and store for the manufacture of boots and shoes. And if you remember, in our original program a few months ago, we talked about the starting of Fisherville in the 1860s and how there were 2 stores that did boots and shoes. Well, apparently Peter Erb was one of them. In connection, he also manufactured harness work, and his son Charles eventually took over the operation. 1867, he marries Julia Frett. They have 9 children. Peter was a member of our Messiah Lutheran Church, where he was a Sunday school superintendent, a teacher, and a treasurer for many years. So Peter had an unusual or untraditional upbringing. He had a mother who was not present, father who was no longer living, raised by his grandfather until he was 12. So Lily Keaton, at the age a few years ago, you would have been on your own doing farm work, trying to find a living. So he had a rough beginning, but fortunately he went through the Civil War then, and fortunately he came through the Civil War as well and found our church. So on behalf of all of us, thank you, Peter Erb, for finding us and doing such great work in our church. Another item from our church history that I want to make mention to is the anxious bench up here. Now, this was a replica, and Alice, help me out here. I believe Charles Funk made this replica. No, we purchased it, okay. I was giving Charlie Funk more credit than was due. But he purchased it for the 150th anniversary because they also mentioned the anxious bench. And is anyone familiar with an anxious bench? All right, we had one, unfortunately. The anxious bench first came into being by, let me get the name correctly here, John Wesley, who was the founder of the Methodist Church. But it really became popular by Charles Finney, who was the most famous and successful evangelist in the 1800s. And he used this as the conversion bench at his revival meetings, and it really became popular back then with him. He used it as a tool to convert non-believers, where those who had sinned would sit on the bench and would pray for their souls along with everyone else at the revival for them to convert. Well, it was also used in churches to have people that were less Christianly during the week than they should have been, and someone might point them out to the pastor, and they would have to sit up here, maybe not in this position, but they would have to sit up here and be humiliated for their lack of Christianity for the week. Now, it caused a lot of division and in the German Reformed churches. So eventually, it was gotten rid of. It did cause a lot of separation in churches as well. And fortunately for us, at some point, it was taken out of this church because it would not be large enough for all of us to at some point to have to sit. We'll move on to our stained glass windows. Stained glass, the first church in the United States to have stained glass was in 1843 in New York. This church was built again in 1849 as a German Reformed and Lutheran church. It did not look like this. It did not have these gorgeous stained glass windows. There was no stained glass up here, which I love that picture. I really do. But it looked much different. I remember as a child, the walls were painted green, and that was 120 years after the church was built. I assume that these were not the same pews. They might be 175 years old, I guess. But we did get some stained glass windows eventually. And with Carol's research, what she discovered was in the year 1910, our church was closed for about a month. And this was listed in the local newspaper. And it was going to reopen after a month of being closed. We assumed that it was closed for a month. It was installing these stained glass windows. Is there any relatives besides Joseph Snyder here? Any relatives of those who are in our stained glass windows today? Any? Okay, all right. And I'll continue. Oh, Stonebrook. Which one is it, Carol and Ronnie? Zimmerman, would you like to light the candle at the Zimmerman for me?
It's Ronnie's.
Ronnie, would you like to be the person to light the candle? Otherwise, Judy will do it, but please come forward. Okay, Ronnie. There is matches right beside it, and you can drop the match after you're done lighting that candle right into the little glass dish at the candle. Okay? And right here. Okay, John Zimmerman. John Zimmerman was born in 1841 in Jackson Township. He was the son of Christian and Elizabeth Enders Zimmerman, and he made farming and stock raising his life work. He married in 1837 to Lydia Bowman. Lydia was also from Jackson Township, and they had 8 children. One of those children was Mary Zimmerman. I'm not going to have time to mention all the children today, and I wish I would, but one of them was Mary Zimmerman, and the other was the Reverend Isaac P. Zimmerman, who presented the window in memory of him. So we had those 2 children to think of first. John Zimmerman died at the age of 72. His wife Lydia died at the age of 70, and they're both buried down here in the lower cemetery area. I do want to make a note about this particular family. 8 children, mother and father, all lived well into their senior years. That is quite an accomplishment back then. I was impressed that they all lived way into the 70s and 80s. Joseph Snyder. And we have with us Mark Snyder, the great-grandchild of Joseph Snyder. He's going to light that for us. So go ahead, Mark. You're welcome to come up and light that. Now remember Mary Zimmerman? Mary Zimmerman marries Joseph Snyder. We're going to have a lot of this pretty soon. You're going to see us go around here. Okay? Joseph Snyder was born in Jackson Township, 1843. His great-grandfather emigrated from Germany and settled in Jackson Township, where he was an extensive farmer and stock raiser. William Snyder, the grandfather of Joseph, was a farmer. And he also kept what is known as the Mountain House. We're all familiar with that? Okay. He had 11 children. One of those was John Christian. Now, John Christian Snyder was the father of Joseph. He became a farmer in Stockton as well. He married Susan Miller, who was born in Jackson Township as well. They also had 11 children. One of those being Joseph himself here. Jump to Joseph now. Joseph Snyder attended school part of the year and worked the farm in the busy season. He remained on the home farm until he was 20 years old. After this, he worked at the shoemaking with Daniel Shook of Jackson Township. He was occupied with shoemaking on his own account until 1883, when he fell ill and had to go to the hospital. In the fall of 1883, he bought a farm of 67 acres. After working it for 2 years, he sold it, and in 1885, he bought a farm consisting of 180 acres, and he was considered one of the most enterprising farmers in the area. He invested in a creamery along with Cornelius Bixler in Fisherville. Mr. Snyder married the daughter of John Zimmerman, Mary, and they had 3 children, Lily, Ira P., and Martin Luther. Joseph was a member of our church, and he served as a deacon for 6 years. He died August 20th, 1899. Keep that date in mind. I'm going to read something in a moment. August 20th, 1899. And he is, of course, buried in the Fisherville Cemetery as well down here. Joseph's son, Martin Luther, had a son, J. Darwin. J. Darwin married Maria, and they had 2 sons. One was Mark, who lit our candle. The other one was his brother, our dear Carl. Now, what I wanted to read you is Faye Snyder, a relative of Joseph's, sent us some information on both the Zimmerman and the Snyder lineage. And in that, she also sent the story in the newspaper about poor Joseph's death. He had an unfortunate ending. I'm going to read that newspaper article to you to share with you what it was like living back in those days. Gored by a cross bull. Farmer Joseph Snyder terribly injured by an enraged bull. Andrews, Pennsylvania, August 16, 1899. On Sunday, Mr. Joseph Snyder, one of our most prosperous and highly respected citizens, was the victim of an enraged bull. Mr. Snyder went into the pasture lot adjoining the barn to drive the cattle into the stable before getting ready for Sunday school, when he was attacked by the bull, which knocked him down and by every effort tried to kill him. The bull, being dehorned, saved Mr. Snyder from instant death. Holes were dug out in the animal's effort to get under the victim with its head, and time and again the unfortunate man was tossed into the air. His daughter at length heard the noise, and looking out the window, saw the terrible sight. She and her mother ran to his help, followed by their faithful shepherd dog. They attacked the infuriated beast with forks, but it paid no attention to that. But the savage onslaught of the dog was too much for the bull, and it ran away. Now we have Joseph here, who did have an unfortunate ending to his life, but as the newspaper article said, very prosperous, highly respected citizen in our community. And we thank him for his service and donations and jobs that he did to make our church continue as it did. So thank you, Mark, for lighting that candle as well. Our next one is Isaac A. Kerstetter. Isaac A. Kerstetter, and this one you'll notice was not dedicated in memory of anyone. It was dedicated by Isaac and his wife. Isaac was born in 1879 in Lower Mahanoy Township, Northumberland County. He grew up in that county, but moved to Fisherville somewhere around 1901 or 1902. Not much is known about him other than he was a carpenter. And he did marry in 1903. He married Lily Snyder, the daughter of Joseph. No research turned up any children from this marriage. And sometime between 1916 and 1919, Lily and Isaac did divorce. Lily moved back with her parents and resumed her Snyder name, and she never remarried, which is most likely why when we were searching the cemetery, we could find no Kerstetters in any of the cemeteries down here. So we are assuming that Isaac may have moved out of the area, went to another church eventually, is buried someplace else. And as it says, Lily took the Snyder name back again instead of the Kerstetter name. Now Isaac did remarry to an Estella Diller. They had 2 children. One was Walter Roy, and the other one was either Pauline Estella or Estella Pauline. Not sure which it was. And they were both baptized at Messiah. But that is all we have that we know about Isaac Kerstetter. Our next one is Catherine Bixler. Sorry, I'm doing a lot of talking up here. All right, Catherine A. Bixler. Catherine was born in 1839. She was the daughter of Daniel Miller, a farmer in Jackson Township, and his wife, Catherine Snyder Miller. Now, we've been going from one place, the Zimmermans to the Snyders to the Kerstetters. I do not have any information. Carol has not had here that this is not the same Snyder as this one was. Amazing, right? Okay. Now, she married Cornelius at the age of 17 in 1856. They had 12 children. Isaac, Emma, David, Katie, John, William, Mary, Robert died at a young age, and then they had 4 that died in infancy. Catherine died in 1892 at the age of 52, and she was buried down here with her husband, Cornelius. Now, that's not much information about Catherine, but Catherine is the only woman whose name is on one of these windows in memory of. And to find out more about her, we're going to dig into a little bit who Cornelius, her husband, was. And he was quite a gentleman. Cornelius was born in Higgins Township, 1834. His father was John Bixler, and he moved his family to Jackson Township in 1844, where he owned a farm and mill, which he operated until his death, 1863. Cornelius attended the common schools of his township. In boyhood and early manhood, he was employed about his father's mill, where he remained until his father's death, when he sold the mill. He then enlisted in Company A, 210th Regiment, Pennsylvania Volunteers. He entered the Army as a 2nd lieutenant, so he was subsequently in command of Company C. He was in the fight at Gravel Hill and Five Forks and Richmond, and was present at the surrender of General Lee. He escaped the Civil War with all wounds, with no wounds at all. At the close of the war, he returned to Fisherville, where he took charge of a hotel and conducted it for 5 years. He also established a carriage factory and undertook the manufacture of vehicles on a large scale, giving employment to many men and benefiting the community. He continued this business for 20 years. Again, if you go back to our original program several months ago, when we talked about Fisherville in 1866, there was that large carriage factory and several other businesses, and Cornelius was the gentleman who owned them. At the close of the war, he returned to Fisherville when he took charge of the, in 1884, he entered the political arena as a county commissioner. In 1892, he erected 2 creameries, one in Fisherville, one in Powell's Valley. In conjunction with the creameries, he ran a cider mill, which produced 100 barrels daily. He owned a 52-acre farm near Fisherville, and in 1893, he opened a general merchandise establishment. Mr. Bixler was elected as county commissioner in 1884, receiving 3,200 votes more than his opponent. In 1888, he was re-elected. Mr. Bixler Cornelius died at the age of 77 years old in 1912. Now, we don't know much about Catherine, but based on what Cornelius was, an incredibly prominent, successful businessman, a revered statesman, went into the Civil War in the line of a second lieutenant, goes in as in that position. So he was highly revered and esteemed in this community, lots of businesses at one time. So we can only imagine what Catherine might have been like, who she was. And I want to imagine that when Catherine came to church, she probably wore a hat very similar to what Judy's wearing here. She probably had teas and lunches for the ladies of the community, maybe the garden club at her very well-kept home. She might have been the president of the Ladies' Aid. Maybe she was very good at making quilts, and she was known for that. Or maybe she helped her husband keep the books for all of his businesses. We don't really know who Catherine was. I think she probably made the best lemon sponge pies of anybody in the entire church until Jenny Farmer came along. Everyone will agree if you ever tasted Jenny Farmer's lemon sponge pies. But in any case, I am sure that Catherine was extremely well loved and well respected by her family, and very well revered by the community, which is probably why her family and her husband wanted to put her name on that window. So all of us generations later on can look at that and think, who was Catherine Bixler? She was someone very special to the community and to our church as well, and we thank her. So well done, Catherine. Peter Klinger. Peter Klinger was born March 13, 1830. He was the son of George and Eva Klinger. He married Rebecca Sinner, and they had 3 children. William, a daughter, Kate, and Catherine, and we think that she may have been a twin. She was born in 1860. We think she had a twin sister, Ida Louise, also born in 1860. But Louise died. Ida Louise died at 1 year of age. William dies at the age of 4. Rebecca, the mother, died 11 days after her daughter died. So Peter Klinger lost his 4-year-old son, his 1-year-old daughter, and his wife, all within 14 days of each other, in April of 1862. His wife was 31 years old when she died. On July 9, 1863, Peter was called in to fight the Civil War. After surviving the war, he returned to Fisherville and married Mary Killinger, the daughter of Jacob and Mariah Killinger. They had 5 children, we believe, and of those 5 children, the youngest one also died at 2 months old. According to the 1870 and 1880 census, Peter was a farmer and a carpenter. He died on September 20th, 1890, and he is buried here in our Lower Cemetery. So Peter experienced a lot of loss and grief in his life, but he is also mentioned quite often in our Sunday school books. And if you remember for our little skit in the beginning, everyone was required to be at Peter Klinger's funeral. And I think that's because everyone in the church very much respected him. So we thank Peter as well for all his service to our Sunday school. Our last one is Louis Ludwig Matter. Louis Matter was born in February 1837 in Washington Township. His parents were Johannes and Margaret Keenan Matter. His father died when Louis was only a year old, and he and his 2 other siblings lived with John and Rebecca Herman. He married Rebecca Huffman, and in June of 1863, he was drafted into the 175th Regiment, Pennsylvania Infantry. Had a lot of our guys in the Civil War. Louis was a farmer and lived near Fisherville. He and Rebecca had 2 sons, Anne Clinton, who was born in 1862, and Clinton was a lifelong member of Messiah. He married Alice Chubb. Their son, Harry, was a Sunday school teacher at this church for many years. I had Harry Matter as a Sunday school teacher when I was a kid. He made quite an impression on me. Does anyone else remember Harry Matter as teaching Sunday school? Look at this. Yes, we do. Okay. Harry Matter here, a wonderful, wonderful man. Louis and Rebecca's other son, Frank J., was born in 1871, and Frank became a Lutheran minister, and he served many churches. Louis died in 1902, Rebecca died in 1926, and again, both of her died here at the a lot of people here who had different experiences in life. They may have started out with humble beginnings, they may have had more prominent status in the community, but they all worked very much for the life of our church, the life of our Sunday school, and to keep it going. And so when you look at these different names on these windows, please keep in mind, because quite often when I sit here, I would always think, who were those people? Who are they? What did they have to do with our church? Now we know a little bit about them. And maybe you can think about that when you look at the windows. We do have some more, though, up here. I have up here, maybe you don't see them. On each side of here, there are some stained glass windows. Those stained glass windows were donated by the YPSCE. Anyone know what that is besides Carol, who did the research? YPSCE, Young People's Society of Christian Endeavor. It was a youth program which began in 1881 by Francis Edward Clark in Portland, Maine. It was an interdenominational youth group to promote an earnest Christian life among its members, to increase their mutual acquaintanceship, and to make them more useful in the service to God. By 1906, there were 67,000 youth-led societies had been formed worldwide, and later it became the World's Christian Endeavor Union. It is still in operation with its office in Ephrata. And there was still an active YPSCE in 2009 in Watsontown, Northumberland County. And that was at the United Pentecostal Church. But it looks as though that church is closed and has merged with the United in Lewisburg. So the two other windows up here, but apparently we had a very good youth group, and we did have a lot of youth in the church back then. And they must have belonged to the program of the United People's Society of Christian Endeavor. One more memorial item that's up here. And I don't know if any of you realize it, if you ever noticed, that these flower vases right here, and by the way, our anniversary committee would like to have all of these recoded. So if anyone has a suggestion how we can do that or to get it done, please let us know. Because these vases up here, they were donated in memory of someone. And does anyone know who that is? We do know some people I know, because it's right back here in the Snyder family. They were donated in loving memory of Paul F. and Floyd N. Snyder by Emma Snyder and the children. So we want to remember them as well. And they would be, Paul F. and Floyd N. would be descendants over here of Joseph Snyder as well. I remember going to Emma Snyder's house with my mother. She was, I don't remember Paul or Floyd, but I do remember Emma. She was the meekest, sweetest, lovely woman that I have ever met. And Mom would sometimes take us to Mom would go and visit a lot of the church ladies. But when I went to Emma's house with her, I loved her huge, big farmhouse. And she was just the sweetest lady ever. So those are some other people that also contributed to our church. At this time, I do want to tell you that we have set up down in the cemetery. And I encourage you all to take a tour of the cemetery after the worship service. It should be very lovely weather outside. We have one of these at all the different grave sites of our different windows here, except for cursors you won't find. I do have two other ones marked, by the way. I have out here in the old cemetery section, there is a John Miller who was born in 1776. I think that's pretty cool. He was the oldest living person in that cemetery. He lived to be 88 years old. So when there was all those children dying at very young ages, lots of women out here dying in their 30s and 40s, John Miller lived to be a ripe old 88. Then another one that's out here that's smart is George Enders. George Enders is the first one, the earliest born of all of our residents. He was born in 1772. So you'll see him marked out as well. But take an opportunity to go through the cemetery and visit some of those graves and get to know the rest of our church family, who is all out there. I'd like to thank, at this point, Roz, you also gave us some information for Sunday school notes. Chorus Carol Stone Road. I'm going to invite you all to refreshments after the worship service. The Ladies' Aid has some very nice refreshments set up over here in the Peach Room. Please join us for that as well. And our next event, our final event for our anniversary, is the first Sunday of December, when we will have the ELCA Bishop attend as our special guest speaker. So I hope you all come back and join that as well. We also have Pastor Krenz and Pastor Mike Petreski planning to come as well to that one. All right, I thank you all. We are going to, at this point, is there anyone who has any, I forgot to take the offering too. We're going to take the offering while we do this little second part here, a last part. Is there anyone here who has a story or favorite time of the church experience or the Sunday school experience they'd like to share? Anything that's happened in the church you'd like to share with us? If you do, and you don't want to say it right now, please let me know. I want to put it into our newsletters and then our little Messiah messages. Yes?
I don't have a story, but I do have a question.
Yes.
I need to know about this bench.
Okay.
Do you know if it was kept like this in the middle?
No. It was kept up in the front. It was more than likely kept off to the side.
Okay.
But it was in the front so everybody could see you.
Really?
Allie. Yes. Yeah. So you better be good for me because you'll be up there. All right. And at this point, we'll take the offering. Thank you. Yes, Roz.
I just want to mention that the Fisherville Day book has a lot of this information too. We're going to have that on sale today.
Yes.
The ornaments.
Yes, I did want to thank you for reminding me. We have 175th Memorial Christmas ornaments that we are selling at cost out here at the table, and we will be selling those as well after the refreshments, after the worship service. Or if you want one now, let us know. At that table is also the Fisherville Day booklet that Roz is talking about that has the history of these windows in it as well. And Carol.
I would just like to mention, and it certainly isn't Roz's fault, I sent in the wrong information. I had Lily Snyder marrying Alan Klinger. And actually she married Nancy Kirsten.
Yes, she does.
So that is in the Fisherville table. I apologize to everybody. I don't know what I was thinking when I was typing.
I don't know what you were thinking either, Carol. I caught that mistake from Carol before I gave my news, so Roz apparently didn't. All right, anything else? Thank you all so much for coming. I hope you enjoyed the presentation that we have given today of our way back when Sunday school service and our info in the windows and everything else. Yes, Seth. You're going to come up here. Okay. Okay. Did you? You probably don't need a microphone. Just yell it out.
Oh, I hope not. Not much, but I'm driving up and I'm realizing that all my memories are like maintenance things, which are pretty boring to tell. But back in the 90s and the early 2000s, it was the Wednesday night work parties, and we'd get together and do what was necessary. And some of the maintenance was the bell, and I thought maybe that would be interesting, and maybe that's what I'll limit to saying. But I was actually in middle school. I crawled up the bell tower and just to see if it needed any attention. I think it was a conversation between Dad and I probably said, "Well, when was that grease last?" And he probably said, "Go find out." So I shimmied up there, and even at that time in the 90s, the ladder going up was very rickety and a little scary. So I remember wrapping the bell rope around my left arm, thinking if the ladder gave way, the rope would catch me, the bell would ring, and someone would come to my rescue. And then I realized that the rope was likely half as old as the church. Probably just snapped. But gorgeous view up there. I think there's a picture somewhere, because I think I had my older camera and I took a picture, knowing that not too many people can venture up there and gaze over the rooftops. But when I poked my head up through, one of the first things, and it was a very peculiar thing, that the rope took a very hard angle from the hole to the pulley. And it seemed very odd and mechanically wrong. And I just left it be because I wasn't quite sure. And ended up saying something to Dad. He's like, "Yeah, that's wrong." He said, it needs to just go straight. anyhow, we figured out that someone overly joyfully rung the bell at some point in history so hard that the bell actually made a full 360-degree spin, which took the rope, and who knows how many decades, because it was really cut in, being that the rope was the wrong way, but just an interesting, crazy thing. Someone was very happy one Sunday, and God bless them. And then, just a real quick funny story. I must have a very good memory when I was 8 years old, because the new building and the dedication in 1988. A lot of memories of that, and I was only 8 years old, but I'm thinking it was a Friday night that Dad came home very, very late. So late that we were all in bed, the lights were out, because him, Charlie Funk, and many others putting in their late volunteer hours to complete the building over here in the late 80s. And Dad came home so late that the lights were out, and actually this was a conversation between Mom and Dad, and neither Mom or Dad can remember the story. It makes me wonder how I know it. But anyhow, I guess Dad finally gets to bed, and Mom goes, "Did you get your supper?" And Dad goes, "Yeah, it was strange." And Mom goes, Dad says, "What did you make?" And she tells him. He goes, "That wasn't whatever, that wasn't meatloaf." She goes, "Glenn, where did you get your plate from?" He says, "On the counter." She says, "Your dinner was in the microwave, that was the food scraps." So just a small price to pay for dedicating so much late nights to working on the addition. But that's it.
Thank you, Seth. And for those who don't know, it's Seth Fever. My son, his father, was Glenn Fever. Okay. Thank you again. We are going to close with hymn number 2. And we're going to sing only the first 2 verses of hymn number 2, Wonderful. Again, join us for refreshments, visit the cemetery, and thank you all for coming. Let's finish this really loud, folks. Worship service begins in just a moment.